General Hospital will reveal Gio had spent years living in the shadows of the world Sonny had built, a world of power, fear, and unbreakable bonds of loyalty. Though they had never acknowledged each other as family, Gio had always quietly observed Sonny, learned from him, and respected him as someone he could trust in a world filled with deceit. He was not someone who easily opened his heart, but Sonny, through his courageous life and silent sacrifices for the ones he loved, had taught Gio more than anyone else ever could. That was why. After Michael nearly lost his life in a devastating explosion at the penthouse, something shifted within Gio. He began noticing things he had never paid attention to before, the dimming light in Sonny's eyes, now filled with exhaustion and doubt. The way Sonny abruptly left conversations to answer hushed phone calls, the tension in his shoulders, and the haunted look he often wore like armor. Gio could feel a storm brewing beneath the surface. And the words Tracy had spat out with such disdain started echoing in his mind, not as harsh criticism, but as a forewarning that chilled him to the core. That night, Gio happened to catch a glimpse of a strange message on Sonny's phone, just a fleeting moment when Sonny stepped away from the dinner table to take a call. But it was enough. The message read, 9:30 p.m. Doc 9. Don't let anyone follow. An icy sensation gripped Joe's spine. He kept his face composed, but a tempest raged inside him. If someone was planning to harm Sonny, this was the moment. And Gio could not let him face it alone. Without telling anyone, Gio silently tailed Sonny into the night. His footsteps were quiet as breath, eyes sharp as a blade. Heart pounding so loudly he could feel it in his throat. The closer he got to the docks, the heavier the air became. The cold sea breeze sliced through his skin like glass. And the sounds of the harbor, creaking wood, distant waves, sounded like a funeral hymn. Then he saw Sonny walking into a decrepit warehouse lit only by a flickering overhead bulb that barely pushed back the suffocating darkness. Gio climbed the rusted beams and found a perch high above the warehouse floor, where he could watch everything unfold. Below, Sonny stood alone, facing a stranger. They spoke in low voices. But Sonny's clenched fists and guarded posture spoke volumes. He did not trust the man. Tension hung thick in the air, suffocating. Gio could not look away. Every muscle in his body taut with anticipation. Then, a sudden noise, a footstep, or perhaps the clang of metal, shattered the fragile moment. In a flash, a masked gunman burst from the shadows behind a pillar, weapon raised. The gun was aimed directly at Sonny's chest. Time slowed. Without a second thought, Gio leapt from his hiding spot, hurling himself through the air. In that split second, his body intercepted the bullet with brutal precision. The sound of the gunshot cracked through the night like a death knell. And the impact sent Gio crashing to the ground, pain exploding through him like fire. The bullet tore into his back, ripping through flesh and bone, but he didn't care. He had done what he had to do. He had saved Sonny. Chaos erupted. Sonny shouted, rushing to Joe's side as blood pooled beneath him, staining his white shirt crimson. The gunman fled into the shadows. Footsteps echoing through the warehouse as Sonny cradled Joe's limp body, trembling. In that moment, he wasn't a crime boss or a powerful figure, he was just a man watching someone he cared about slipping away in his arms. Sonny screamed for help, panic overtaking him as he tried to stop the bleeding. Not knowing he was holding his own flesh and blood. The ambulance arrived quickly, but every second felt like an eternity. At General Hospital, the medical team worked frantically to stabilize Gio. It was during this emergency treatment that something unexpected surfaced, an anomaly in Joe's blood work, a rare genetic marker that matched only one other person in the hospital's medical history. Sonny Corinthos. Urgent DNA testing followed, and the results were undeniable. Giovanni Palmieri was Sonny's biological grandson. Meanwhile, Lois, devastated by the news of Joe's condition, finally confessed what she had kept hidden for years. Gio was the child she had carried in secret, a result of her youthful relationship with Dante. She had kept him away to protect him, never knowing he would one day come back into their lives like this. The revelation struck Sonny like lightning. All these years, he had protected Gio, mentored him, trusted him, never knowing the boy was his own family, his grandson. The boy who had just taken a bullet for him. Dante and Brook Lynn, reeling from the truth, rushed to the hospital with guilt and fear etched into every line of their faces. The child they thought was lost had always been there, just beyond reach. And now, as they feared losing him forever, the truth finally surfaced. Tracy, once so sure that Gio was just another young man pulled into Sonny's dangerous orbit, now faced the shattering realization that she had blood ties to him. He was her great-grandson. Sonny didn't leave Joe's bedside. Day after day, he remained there, holding the boy's hand, whispering words of strength and hope. And then, finally, Gio stirred. His eyes fluttered open, and the first thing he saw was Sonny's tear-streaked face, eyes filled with gratitude and sorrow. No words were needed. In that shared gaze, something deeper passed between them, recognition, love, and the unbreakable bond of blood. Gio had saved Sonny's life. But he had also unknowingly restored a part of Sonny's heart that had long gone numb. Now, the truth was out. The boy everyone thought was just another soldier in Sonny's world was in fact its heir. The storm had passed, but the aftermath remained. There were still enemies lurking in the shadows, questions left unanswered, and dangers yet to come. But one thing had changed forever: Sonny was no longer alone. He had a grandson. A warrior. A protector. And their story, born of blood, sacrifice, and fate, was only just beginning. In a single, heart-stopping instant, Gio didn't hesitate. There was no time for thought, no pause to weigh consequence or fear. Instinct took over, driven by a force deeper than logic: loyalty, love. Something primal and unshakable. He launched himself from his hidden vantage point high above the warehouse, body soaring through the heavy air like a silent guardian falling from the heavens. It all unfolded as if the world had slowed around him. Time bent, stretched. The muzzle of the gun lit up with a blinding flash. The explosive crack of the gunshot tore through the night, echoing through the cavernous walls of the old warehouse like a death knell. And then, impact. The bullet struck Gio with devastating force, burrowing into his body, searing through flesh and muscle. His body jerked violently from the impact, momentum carrying him down as if gravity had suddenly tripled in strength. Sonny turned just in time to see Gio collapse in front of him. The young man's face contorted in pain, blood blooming across his back like a crimson stain spreading through white cloth. The horror in Sonny's eyes was instant and overwhelming. For a man who had survived assassination attempts, gang wars, betrayal, and loss, this moment was like nothing he had ever known. He watched someone take a bullet meant for him. Someone he had protected, mentored, trusted, someone he didn't yet know was family. The gunman vanished into the darkness, slipping away like a ghost, leaving behind only echoes and fear. The warehouse plunged into chaos. Gio lay motionless on the cold, unforgiving cement floor, his chest rising and falling in shallow, painful gasps. Blood pooled around him with frightening speed. Sonny dropped to his knees beside him, trembling as he gathered Joe's broken body into his arms. The powerful mob boss, the man feared across Port Charles, crumbled in that moment. His voice cracked as he called Joe's name again and again, hands pressing against the wound in a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding. This wasn't just another casualty in the war he had waged his entire life. This was personal. This was devastating. And for the first time in all his battles, Sonny Corinthos felt helpless. He wasn't losing a soldier. He was losing someone whose presence had silently become essential to him, someone who had stood by his side without condition. A part of him. The ambulance arrived within minutes, but for Sonny, each tick of the clock was an eternity. As paramedics swarmed the scene, stabilizing Gio as best they could, Sonny remained at his side, refusing to let go of his hand until they were forced to pull him away for transport. At General Hospital, the emergency team sprang into action the moment Gio was wheeled through the doors. His condition was critical. The bullet had pierced dangerously close to vital organs, and he had already lost an alarming amount of blood. As they rushed him into surgery, a team of specialists worked with grim determination, pumping him full of transfusions, administering medication to stabilize his blood pressure, and scanning for internal damage. Amid the chaos, a junior attending noticed something unusual in Joe's blood panel, a rare genetic anomaly so specific it had only been seen in a handful of documented cases. All linked to one bloodline in Port Charles, the Corinthos family. The finding raised immediate red flags. As a matter of protocol and medical necessity, further tests were ordered. DNA was cross-checked against the hospital's genetic database, where Sonny's information had been stored years ago following a previous health incident. The results came back swiftly. Positive. Unmistakably positive. Giovanni Palmieri was not just a young man who had taken a bullet for Sonny. He was Sonny's biological grandson. The revelation hit the medical team like a lightning bolt. Whispered voices filled the surgical hallway, as stunned nurses passed the results to the attending physician, who quietly requested a private meeting. As the doctor walked the corridors with the sealed file in hand, Sonny paced outside the operating room, his anxiety mounting with every passing second. His hair was disheveled. Hands clenched and unclenched, his mind flooded with panic, guilt, and the echo of Joe's agonized breath. He didn't yet know what the doctors had discovered. He only knew that Gio had nearly died saving his life, and the weight of that sacrifice was suffocating. He didn't know that behind those hospital doors, the young man bleeding out on the table was more than his protege, more than a loyal friend. He was blood. Kin. A connection Sonny had never known existed, one that had revealed itself not through conversation, not through confession, but through the ultimate act of devotion. The doctor finally emerged from the OR corridor, file pressed tightly to his chest, and approached Sonny with measured steps. Sonny looked up, his eyes raw with emotion. And the world seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. He didn't yet know that the truth waiting to be spoken would change everything. Not just his understanding of Gio, but his understanding of himself, his past, and what remained of his family. When Lois received the devastating news that her son was in critical condition, fighting for his life after taking a bullet meant for Sonny, something within her shattered. For years, she had lived with the weight of a secret too heavy to share, a truth buried so deep that even she had begun to believe it would remain locked away forever. But now, faced with the possibility of losing Gio, the walls she had so carefully built around that secret came crumbling down. In the chaos of the hospital, surrounded by flashing monitors and muffled cries, Lois pulled aside the attending physician and confessed in a trembling voice what she had kept hidden for nearly 2 decades. Giovanni Palmieri was not just some loyal young man in Sonny's orbit, he was her son, the result of a passionate and reckless love affair from her youth with Dante. Dante, who had never known she was pregnant. Dante, who had been told nothing and given no choice. She had made the impossible decision to go through the pregnancy alone, convinced that secrecy was the only way to protect her child from a world she feared would devour him. But now, that decision was unraveling in front of her, thread by agonizing thread. As she whispered the truth to the doctor, guilt and fear danced in her eyes, mingling with a mother's desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to make things right. When the truth was relayed to Sonny, it struck him like a thunderclap to the soul. His knees nearly gave way beneath him. All his life, Sonny had dealt with betrayal, with death, with the loss of family, so much of it numbing him to pain. But this was different. Gio wasn't just some brave kid who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was family. His grandson. The boy who had stood in front of a bullet meant for him, who had silently watched over him, protected him, and shown more loyalty than most men twice his age, was his own blood. A grandson he had never known existed, born of a son who had also been kept in the dark. The mixture of awe, sorrow, and overwhelming gratitude that surged through Sonny's chest was unlike anything he had ever felt. In Joe's selfless act, Sonny saw not only a reflection of the strength and courage he had spent a lifetime trying to embody, but also the painful irony of a life spent pushing people away to protect them. Only to find that his greatest protector had been beside him all along. Tears filled his eyes, unbidden and unstoppable. As the image of Gio diving into the path of a bullet replayed in his mind over and over again. The guilt gnawed at him. How could he not have seen it? How could he not have known? Meanwhile, Dante and Brook Lynn arrived at the hospital, their world already beginning to unravel. For years, they had each quietly mourned the loss of a child they believed was gone forever, stolen by time, shame, and circumstance. Now, standing in the cold fluorescent lights of the emergency ward, they were being forced to confront the truth: that child had never truly been gone. He had lived, grown, and become a man, one they had crossed paths with, unknowingly, perhaps even carelessly. The anguish on Dante's face as he absorbed the news was undeniable. His son, the boy he had never held, never named, was lying behind those doors, critically wounded because of a war Dante had never even known his son was a part of. The regret was all-consuming. Brook Lynn, too, felt the sting of truth slice through her like a blade. The boy she had once loved as a member of the extended family, admired for his maturity and resolve, was hers. The moment of realization was blinding. It exposed every corner of their hearts that had long gone untouched. They had been robbed of years, of birthdays, of memories. And now, all they wanted was one chance to claim their son. One chance to say his name, not as a friend, not as a stranger, but as family. Tracy, ever the fierce protector of her clan, found herself stunned into silence. She had always distrusted Sonny, feared the havoc he brought into every life he touched, and warned Gio time and time again to stay away from him. But now, with the revelation that Gio was her great-grandson, all those words felt hollow. Her fears, her stern warnings, had not been misplaced, they had been prophetic. Everything she had tried to prevent had come to pass, but it was too late to reverse course. The truth was a tidal wave that crashed down on her, leaving no place to hide. Through it all, Sonny never left the hospital. He sat vigil by Joe's side, day and night, gripping his hand as though the strength of that touch could anchor Gio to this world. Every beep of the heart monitor, every soft exhale from the oxygen mask, became a prayer. For Sonny, this was no longer about guilt or redemption, it was about love. Pure, unfiltered, unconditional love. The love of a grandfather who had been given a second chance, and who was willing to sacrifice everything to keep that chance alive. And then, one morning, after days of uncertainty, Gio stirred. His eyelashes fluttered, his fingers twitched. Slowly, painfully, his eyes opened. The first thing he saw was Sonny, sitting beside him, eyes filled with tears and soul bared. No words passed between them. None were needed. In that single, silent moment, Gio understood everything. And as Sonny squeezed his hand tightly, their bond was sealed, not forged through history or years spent together, but through a single act of selfless courage and a flood of truth that no longer needed to be hidden. Now, the truth about Gio was known to all. The boy once thought forgotten had become the bridge that reconnected a fractured family. He was the unexpected hope. The silent strength that had held them together even when they hadn't known they were drifting apart. Sonny, long burdened by the weight of protecting everyone around him, finally understood that it was the love and sacrifice of those people, not his walls, that had kept him alive. Gio, by throwing himself in front of that bullet, hadn't just saved his grandfather's life. He had given them all something far more valuable, a reason to change, a reason to forgive, a reason to live differently. And while many questions still hung unanswered, who had tried to assassinate Sonny, why now, and whether Gio was truly out of danger, the one truth that mattered most was now unshakable. Sonny was no longer alone. He had a grandson. Not one forged through promises or expectations, but through action, through pain, through sacrifice, through blood. A warrior had stepped into his life. Not to inherit an empire, but to rewrite the story of a family that was always meant to be together. And their journey was only just beginning.